Have you ever felt like your mind is a city that never sleeps? A restless metropolis where the traffic of your thoughts never stops, honking with anxieties about tomorrow, screeching with regrets about yesterday, and buzzing with the relentless pressure of the present moment. We live in an era of hyperconnection, yet we have never felt more disconnected from our own centers. We are exhausted, not just physically, but spiritually. We react to every email, every social media comment, and every perceived slight as if they were life-threatening emergencies. Why does a stranger's rudeness ruin your entire afternoon? Why does one mistake at work keep you awake until 3 a.m.? And why, despite having more comfort than any generation in history, do we still feel an underlying sense of emptiness? Welcome back to Pure Zen Reflections. Today, we are embarking on a journey that transcends time and space. We aren't just here to listen to stories. We are here to undergo a mental detox. I am going to share with you 10 classic Buddhist parables, vessels of wisdom that have carried millions of souls across the turbulent waters of life for over 2 millennia. From the profound silence of the empty boat to the transformative realization of the second arrow, these stories are keys. They are designed to unlock the prison of the ego and lead you back to the quiet sanctuary of your own heart. Find a place where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes for a moment, take a deep, grounding breath, and let the outside world fade into the background. Let these stories wash over you like a gentle rain on a parched garden. Let us begin. 1. The empty boat, the illusion of personal attack. Imagine a misty morning on a vast, ancient river. The air is cool and damp, and a thick veil of gray fog clings to the surface of the water. A lone man is rowing his small wooden boat. He is in no hurry. With every stroke of the oars, he feels the rhythm of the universe. The water is glassy, reflecting the pale light of dawn. He is content, bathed in the rare gift of absolute solitude. Suddenly, through the dense fog, he hears a sound, the rhythmic splashing of another set of oars, but they are erratic and fast. Before he can react, thump, a heavy wooden boat crashes violently into his own. The impact is so sudden that he is nearly thrown into the freezing water. His peaceful sanctuary is shattered. In an instant, the flames of rage ignite in his chest. His heart pounds against his ribs. He grips his oars until his knuckles turn white. He turns around, his lungs filling with air, ready to unleash a torrent of insults. "You fool!" he prepares to scream. "How dare you be so careless? Do you have no eyes? You nearly killed me. You have ruined my morning." He is ready to defend his dignity, ready to demand an apology, ready to make the other person feel the weight of his anger. But as the mist parts for a fleeting second, he freezes. He blinks, squinting through the gray veil. The other boat is there, rocking gently from the collision. But it is empty. No one is at the oars. It was simply a boat that had come untied from a distant dock, drifting aimlessly with the current. In that heartbeat, the man's anger evaporates. There is no one to shout at. There is no other who attacked him. His ego, which was standing tall and wounded, suddenly finds nothing to lean against. He realizes that his rage wasn't caused by the collision itself, but by the story he told himself about the collision, the story that someone had intentionally or carelessly harmed him. He sits back down, breathes in the cool mist, and realizes all of life is full of empty boats. When someone is rude to you, when a driver cuts you off, or when a colleague is cold, they are often just drifting boats, driven by their own untied ropes of trauma and ignorance. They aren't attacking you. They are just drifting. 2. The 2 arrows, the source of optional suffering. The Buddha once sat with his disciples under the shade of a heavy-leaf tree and asked them a question. "If a man is struck by an arrow, is it painful?" The disciples answered, "Yes, Lord, it is very painful." The Buddha then asked, "If he is struck by a second arrow in the same spot, is that even more painful?" "Of course, Lord," they replied. The Buddha then explained that in life, We are all inevitably struck by the first arrow. The first arrow represents the unavoidable pains of human existence. It is the sudden illness, the loss of a loved one, the unexpected job loss, or the sharp sting of an unkind word. This is the primary wound. It is a physical or situational reality that causes natural pain. However, the Buddha observed that most people do not stop at the first arrow. Instead, they immediately begin to shoot themselves with a second arrow. They start thinking, "Why did this happen to me? It's not fair. I must have done something wrong. My life is ruined. Everyone will think I'm a failure. This pain will never end." This second arrow is our mental reaction, our resistance, our judgment, and our catastrophic storytelling. The Buddha taught that while we cannot always control the first arrow, the second arrow is entirely optional. The wise person feels the sting of the first arrow, acknowledges the pain, and begins to heal. But they refuse to pick up the bow and shoot themselves again with the poison of why and should. Peace is not a life without the first arrow. It is the wisdom to never shoot the second. 3. The two monks and the woman, carrying the weight of the past. Two monks, one elderly and wise, the other young and rigid, were traveling together back to their monastery after a week of heavy monsoon rains. The paths were muddy and the rivers were swollen. As they reached a particularly turbulent crossing, they saw a young, beautiful woman in a silk dress, standing helplessly at the water's edge. She was terrified of the current and feared her expensive clothes would be ruined. The monks had taken a sacred vow never to touch a woman. The younger monk, seeing her, looked away immediately, his jaw set in a mask of discipline. He hurried past her, crossing the river with a sense of moral superiority. But the elder monk did something unexpected. Without saying a word, he picked the woman up, placed her on his shoulders, and waded through the waist-deep water. On the other side, he set her down gently. She bowed in gratitude, and the monks continued their journey. For the next 4 hours, they walked in a heavy, suffocating silence. The younger monk was fuming. He couldn't believe what he had seen. His mind was racing. How could he? He broke his vows. He is a hypocrite. He touched her. He carried her. Finally, unable to contain his indignation any longer, he burst out, "Sufu, how could you do that? You know our vows. We are not allowed to touch women, yet you carried her on your shoulders." The elder monk stopped walking and looked at his young companion with eyes full of compassion. He smiled softly and said, "Brother, I set that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story reminds us that we often carry the weight of past events, grudges, and judgments long after the event has ended. We suffer because we refuse to set down what is no longer there. 4. The full cup, the necessity of an empty mind. A highly respected university professor, known for his vast intellect and many degrees, traveled a long distance to visit the Zen master Nan In. The professor wanted to discuss the philosophy of Zen, but it quickly became clear that he didn't come to listen. Every time Nan In began to speak, the professor interrupted with his own theories, quoting famous books and citing his own research. He wanted to prove how much he already knew. Nan In listened patiently, his face a mask of calm. Eventually, he suggested they have tea. He performed the ceremony with meticulous care. He placed a cup in front of the professor and began to pour. The tea rose to the brim of the cup, but Nan In didn't stop. He kept pouring. The tea spilled over the edge, flooding the saucer, then dripping onto the professor's expensive silk trousers and splashing onto the floor. "Stop!" the professor shouted, jumping up in frustration. "Can't you see? The cup is over full. No more will go in." Nan In set the teapot down and looked the professor in the eye. "Like this cup," he said quietly, "you are full of your own opinions, your own pride, and your own assumptions. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup? To learn, to grow, and to find peace, we must first admit that we do not have all the answers. We must cultivate beginner's mind, a state of openness where we are ready to receive the world as it is, not as we think it should be." 5. The gift of anger, reclaiming your power. There was once a man who was deeply offended by the Buddha's growing popularity and his message of peace. He believed the Buddha was a fraud and decided to humiliate him in public. He found the Buddha sitting quietly with a group of followers and began to shout the most vile, creative, and disgusting insults imaginable. He attacked the Buddha's family, his appearance, and his teachings. Throughout the entire tirade, the Buddha remained as still as a mountain. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He didn't even look angry. He simply sat there with a gentle, compassionate expression on his face. This only made the man angrier. He shouted until his voice was hoarse and his face was purple. When the man finally stopped to catch his breath, the Buddha spoke. "Tell me," he said softly, "if you buy a gift for someone, and that person refuses to accept the gift, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused by the question, snapped, "It belongs to me, of course. I bought it." The Buddha nodded. "Correct. And so it is with your anger. If you offer me your insults and I refuse to accept them, the anger remains with you. It is your burden to carry, not mine. Anger is like a hot coal that you pick up with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. You have the power to refuse the gifts of negativity that others try to force upon you." 6. The mustard seed, the universality of suffering. Kisa Gotami was a young woman who lived during the time of the Buddha. Her life was filled with joy until her only child, a beautiful baby boy, suddenly fell ill and died. Grief-stricken to the point of madness, she refused to believe her son was gone. She carried his small, cold body from house to house, begging her neighbors for medicine to wake him up. Most people turned away in pity, thinking she had lost her mind. Finally, someone told her to go to the Buddha. She ran to him and cried, "Lord, please give me the medicine that will cure my son." The Buddha looked at her with infinite tenderness. He didn't lecture her on the nature of death. Instead, he said, "I can help you, but first you must bring me a handful of mustard seeds. However, these seeds must come from a house where no one has ever died. No father, no mother, no child, no servant." Hope flared in Kisa Gotami's heart. She hurried into the village and went to the first house. "I need mustard seeds," she said. "The Buddha says they will heal my son." The family gave her the seeds gladly, but when she asked, "Has anyone ever died in this house?" they looked at her sadly and said, "The living are few, but the dead are many. My grandfather passed away last year." She went to the next house. "A daughter died here 2 months ago," they said. At the next house, it was a husband. At the next, a beloved servant. She walked until the sun began to set, realizing that there was not a single doorway in the entire valley that had not been visited by death. As the shadows grew long, her madness began to clear. She realized that she was not alone in her pain. Suffering and loss were the common threads that bound every human being together. This realization didn't make her son come back, but it dissolved the wall of isolation that her grief had built. She laid her son's body in the forest and returned to the Buddha, finding peace in the shared compassion of all living things. 7. Maybe. So, the wisdom of non-judgment. In a small, remote village, there lived an old farmer who had worked his land for decades. One morning, his only horse, the one he used for plowing and transport, broke through the fence and ran away into the mountains. The neighbors gathered at his gate, shaking their heads. "What terrible luck," they cried. "How will you survive without your horse?" The farmer simply shrugged and said, "Maybe so." A week later, the horse returned, and it wasn't alone. It led a pack of 12 magnificent wild horses back to the farm. The neighbors were amazed. "What incredible luck!" they exclaimed. "You are now the richest man in the village." The farmer looked at the horses and calmly replied, "Maybe so." The next day, the farmer's only son attempted to train one of the wild horses. The horse bucked, throwing the young man to the ground and breaking his leg in 3 places. The neighbors returned to offer their sympathy. "What a tragedy! Now your son is a cripple, and you must do all the work yourself." What awful luck. The farmer leaned on his cane and said, "Maybe so." Soon after, a great war broke out, and the king's army swept through the village, drafting every able-bodied young man to fight in a bloody conflict from which few would return. They bypassed the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The neighbors, whose sons were all taken, wept and said, "You are so fortunate. Your son is safe at home." The farmer looked out at his fields and said, "Maybe so." This story teaches us the danger of labeling events as good or bad too quickly. Life is a complex tapestry of causes and effects. What seems like a disaster today may be the seed of a blessing tomorrow. When we stop judging every event, we find the "maybe so" peace that allows us to ride the waves of life without being drowned by them. 8. The cracked pot. The beauty of imperfection. An elderly water bearer in India had 2 large pots, each hung on the ends of a pole which he carried across his neck. One of the pots was perfect and always delivered a full portion of water at the end of the long walk from the stream to the master's house. The other pot had a crack in it, and by the time they reached their destination, it was only half full. For 2 years, this went on daily, with the bearer delivering only 1.5 pots of water. The perfect pot was proud of its accomplishments, but the poor cracked pot was miserable. It felt like a failure, ashamed that it could only do half of what it was designed to do. One day, by the stream, the cracked pot spoke to the water bearer. "I am so ashamed of myself, and I want to apologize to you. Because of my flaw, you have to do twice as much work, and you don't get the full value for your efforts." The water bearer smiled. "Did you notice," he asked, "that there are flowers only on your side of the path, but not on the other pot's side? That's because I have always known about your flaw, and I took advantage of it. I planted flower seeds on your side of the path, and every day while we walk back from the stream, you've been watering them. For 2 years, I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate my master's table. Without you being just the way you are, he would not have this beauty to grace his house. We all have cracks, but it is through those cracks that the light gets in, and the flowers grow." 9. The heavy rock. The choice to let go. A Zen master and his student were walking along a mountain trail when they came across a massive, jagged boulder sitting in the middle of a beautiful meadow. The master stopped and pointed at the rock. "Tell me," he said, "do you think that rock is heavy?" The student looked at the massive stone and replied, "Yes, master. It looks incredibly heavy. It must weigh several tons." The master smiled and said, "Actually, that rock is not heavy at all. It only becomes heavy if you try to pick it up. As long as it sits there on the ground, it has no weight for you. It is just a part of the landscape. Our worries, our past mistakes, and our anxieties about the future are exactly like that boulder. They exist in our world, but they only become heavy when we choose to wrap our arms around them and carry them with us. We think that by thinking about a problem more, we are solving it, but often we are just lifting the rock. True relaxation comes when we realize we can simply leave the rock where it is and walk on. 10. The still lake. The clarity of non-doing. A powerful king, plagued by constant stress and a racing mind, sought out a hermit who lived by a high mountain lake. "I have tried everything," the king said. "I have built temples. I have listened to philosophers. I have meditated for hours, but my mind is still a chaotic mess of thoughts. How do I find clarity?" The hermit didn't answer. He simply led the king to the edge of the lake. It was a windy day. The surface of the water was choppy, and the waves had stirred up the silt and mud from the bottom. The water was brown and opaque. "Tell me, king," the hermit said, "can you see your reflection? Can you see the pebbles at the bottom?" "No," the king replied. "The water is too disturbed." Practical application, bringing Zen to the 21st century. How do we take these ancient echoes and apply them to a world of iPhones, corporate deadlines, and social media? Identify the empty boats in traffic and email. The next time someone sends you a passive-aggressive email or cuts you off in traffic, pause. Visualize them as an empty boat. Realize that their behavior is a result of their internal currents, their stress, their bad morning, their upbringing. It isn't about you. By not taking it personally, you save your own energy. Stop the second arrow at work. You made a mistake in a presentation? That's the first arrow. It stings. But the thoughts that follow, I'm going to get fired. My boss hates me. I'm so stupid. Those are the second arrows. Catch yourself. Say, the first arrow has landed. I will not shoot the second. Focus on fixing the mistake, not punishing yourself. The maybe so mindset for career setbacks. Did you lose a promotion? Maybe so. It feels bad now, but perhaps that role would have led to burnout. Or perhaps a better opportunity is coming. Maintain a neutral stance toward life's twists to prevent emotional whiplash. Embrace your cracks in social media culture. We live in a world of filtered perfection. Remember the cracked pot. Your vulnerabilities, your struggles, and your unique flaws are what make you human and relatable. They are the things that water the flowers in your relationships. Authenticity is more peaceful than perfection. Empty your cup. Before a conversation, before you enter a meeting or a difficult conversation with a partner, consciously empty your cup. Put aside your need to be right or your pre-written rebuttals. Listen with the intent to understand, not to reply. You will find that peace enters the room when ego leaves it. The message and the call to action. My friends, the journey to a relaxed mind is not a sprint. It is a slow, beautiful walk back to yourself. You don't need to change the world to find peace. You don't need to move to a cave in the Himalayas. You only need to change how you relate to the boats, arrows, and rocks of your daily life. Peace is your natural state. It is the lake when the wind stops blowing. It is the sky when the clouds part. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that hears the thoughts. You are not your stress. You are the space in which the stress arises and falls. If these stories brought even a moment of stillness to your heart today, we invite you to join our community. Pure Zen Reflections is more than a channel. It is a digital sanctuary for those seeking a deeper way of living. Before you go, please do 3 things. Like this video to help us share this wisdom with others who are struggling. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to ensure you never miss our journeys into mindfulness. Leave a comment below. Tell us, which of these 10 stories resonated with you the most? Is there a second arrow you are ready to stop shooting today? We read every comment and draw inspiration from your journeys. Remember, the boat is empty. The second arrow is optional, and you are already whole. Be peaceful, be mindful, be Zen.